Good morning, and Happy New Year. Alas, girlfriends, we are here, 2021. Can you believe it? I'm trying to keep my screen a certain way and so I can see if somebody pops on, but I don't know if I will be able to make that keep happening. We'll see. Okay, so y'all, we are going to talk today about you, LLC. As you remember, you are the boss and you are the owner and operator of your life. So what does that look like and how are we going to get there? Whoops. I know more than anything in the entire world that you are here in this group because you want to change your life, how you show up, how you respond, and how you choose your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, and the results of your daily life on purpose. What this looks like is up to you. If you see me pause, it's because I'm letting someone in. Uh-oh, hi. Okay, let's see there. So yes, what this looks like is up to you. You know this based on what you've learned over the last couple months, that your happiness, your peace, your contentment in life is actually up to you and you alone. And it might require some changes. I know I'm personally making some this year, and I will encourage you to also. One of the big changes I'm making this year is I am actually taking Fridays off for self-care, self-indulgence, I don't know, but to truly not schedule anything that has to happen as far as client calls or work deadlines or anything like that. I'm really trying to make my Fridays a little more free to take a deep breath and breathe. That's the day typically when they allow us into my child's school that we are involved there, just to kind of have a little bit of a breathing space for me. I typically do not also do any work on Sundays, and that includes social media, except for this past weekend when it's a humongous weekend for my Faster Way to Fat Loss groups getting started for the new year. But those are a couple of the things that I do implement, and I would encourage you to implement some new things as well. And I'm happy to talk through some of those ideas. One thing that I also do is I am no longer, and I went through, I don't know if y'all follow this dog, y'all. This dog, I can get the kids situated, the husband situated. The dog is a different story because she whines when she wants to be with someone, and then who she wants to be with changes at many moments in time. Let me check this for a second. So anyway, sorry y'all, it's really hard with this platform of the way this works for Zoom to be able to see my notes and be able to see when someone needs to get let in. So thank you for your patience there. But anyway, there's a girl called, what is her name? The girl named Blake, actually, on Instagram. And I did something with her about 6 months ago where basically it was a challenge, and I've now done so. I got an alarm clock. I don't know, does anybody still have one of those? I bought one. And I actually plug my phone in an opposite room in the house, where I am not tempted to like scroll until I finally can fall asleep. I am not tempted if I wake up in the middle of the night to grab my phone. And so I just keep it over there, and I have off hours where I'm not on my phone. As y'all know, a lot of my work is on my phone, answering questions, responding to people in Instagram, etc. So that is something that I have personally put in place as well. So I do want to challenge you to don't overdo it, okay? Nobody does well with overdoing, and that's where we fail. So find a few small, simple things though that you can implement to take charge of you, and cleaning up little bitty things like that in your life will actually make a huge difference. So I would also encourage you, if you're into this sort of thing, to maybe consider picking up the book Atomic Habits. It is extremely fascinating when we look at, you think that you see these people doing these big things or being super disciplined in their lives, and you think, oh, well, they must be the kind of person that's just always been disciplined and does these big, extravagant life changes. And it's actually not true. In the book, he talks about how I think it's either a 1% or a 3% improvement over time causes an increase in whatever that area or that habit is of over like, y'all, I'm so terrible at remembering facts, but it's a lot. Okay. And it's actually small improvements over time that make the biggest changes. When we think it's big changes, make big changes. So I would encourage you to pick up that book. Another book I was going to suggest is Better Than My Dreams by Paula Reinhardt. And that's a really great book when maybe your life isn't going as expected and you feel like you're really, really just kind of in a pit that you can't get out of circumstantially. I obviously believe in this thought work. I believe in this coaching. I believe in these tools that we use in here and learn about. But sometimes you just want a good book to pick up that's just kind of even just more growth and more equipping. So I don't remember the season I was in when I read that book. So I have the right to change my mind and be like, oh, that book's terrible. And why did I suggest it? But I do remember that being a book that was pretty impactful for me. So anyway, back to this. In this training, we are going to talk about emotional childhood and manuals. I mentioned that on Instagram. I included boundaries, but we're not going to talk about boundaries today. It was too much. And someone responded like, oh no, I'm not ready for this. This could be so painful. But actually, it's not. That's why sometimes I really, really enjoy more of this life coaching approach than some of the dealing with emotional wounds and things like that, because sometimes you can actually heal and move past those things without that painful process. So we'll try it and see. But let me let the dog out. You driving me nuts, Dixie. Go. Let's see how many minutes. It's 10:11. Let's see how many minutes till she comes back and whines. Okay. So later this month, so in addition to us discussing today manuals and emotional childhood, I do want to share with you that later this month, our guest speaker will come in with some goal setting and whatnot, which I know sounds a little bit backwards to not have her on first. But, I always have a reason for the madness. And my reason is intentional because the truth is that all of these goals that many of us have already written out for the year, we actually want to solidify them after the hype has worn down. Okay. And so that training is going to help with that. And it is called Goals on Purpose. You will love her. Her name is Kimberly Bailey. She's on Instagram if you want to check her out. I was actually a guest in one of her groups last month. And so you're going to really, really enjoy her. She is a great treat. So we do have a lot to cover. So I do have a call in 45 minutes. So let's get to it. The reason that I do want to talk about emotional childhood and manuals as it relates to you and ownership over your life is to give you understanding and knowledge that you probably do not have. And that is okay. That is why I'm here. But emotional childhood actually occurs when grown adults have not matured past childhood in terms of managing their emotions. This means they react to their emotions, they act out or avoid emotions rather than taking responsibility, feeling the emotion that's uncomfortable, and choosing thoughts that will create a more desirable and appropriate emotion and response there. Okay, so in short, emotional childhood is not taking responsibility for how you feel. We call ourselves adults, but most of us are still functioning as emotional children. And it's not something that we do on purpose. Most of our parents still function as emotional children, perpetuating this cycle. So one of the most rewarding things that you can experience is to become an emotional adult, fully empowered and responsible for your own life. We are responsible for how we feel at every moment. We are in charge of how we think. We're in charge of how we feel. And when we are functioning as emotional children, we are blaming other people for how we feel, how we act, and the results that happen in our life, which we are actually choosing. Can I get an amen? So we are capable of reflecting on our thoughts, and therefore we can decide what to think and what to feel in any given moment, no matter what anyone else does in our lives. That's not to say that you don't need to feel pain, hurt, anger, sadness, disappointment. Those things are very, very real, but we can feel both. And I want you to experience both and have the full human, if you will, experience of as much good as we have bad. Don't just choose all bad, and don't kind of sugarcoat it and feel all great, okay? Because that is just typically going to be unhealthy and untrue. So we are capable of reflecting on our thoughts, like I said, and deciding what to think and what to feel in any given moment, no matter what anyone else does in our lives. And we teach our children at a very young age, unfortunately, that other people are responsible for how we feel. And it becomes so ingrained in them, because it was ingrained in us, that we don't even recognize it or question it and realize just how disempowering it is. Now, while children don't have the capacity to make that distinction, many people continue to function this way even as adults. So it is debilitating to live this way, obviously, but it also locks you into a place of blame, into this space of blaming others and becoming a victim. We blame the government, we blame the economy, we blame our bosses, we blame other people, we blame our in-laws, we blame our mothers, we blame our fathers, we blame our childhood, we blame everything. And not only do we blame these people or things or events for how we feel, but for the actions we take and for the results it has in our lives. So emotional adulthood means taking responsibility for our pain and also our joy or our happiness. And it's not, an emotional adulthood is not expecting other people to make us happy. Emotional adulthood is not expecting others to make us feel secure. It means appreciating that we are the only ones who can hurt our own feelings, and we do so by our own thoughts. Taking full responsibility for every single thing we feel, no matter what someone else does or doesn't do, is no small feat. Let me check to make sure I'm not missing someone. Okay, excuse me. Taking full responsibility for most people is a huge challenge, but it's worthwhile when we are able to do so. Many people feel like victims, as if they are at the mercy of other people in their lives. The behaviors associated with emotional childhood often resemble the behavior of a toddler. When I'm working with one-on-one clients a lot, we talk about when we're working through things, we're looking at that as like your toddler brain showing up. And then we look at it from what it looks like to show up with your prefrontal cortex, this part of your brain that has been given advanced capability to think differently and to mature differently. So we will see our emotional childhood often resemble the behavior of a toddler, right? Temper tantrums, raging fits, an engagement with someone else and yelling and screaming matches, lots of uncontrollable crying. The end result is finding ourselves in a place where we don't feel like we have control over our adult selves. So we act like toddlers and we place blame on other people or our circumstances, and we act as if we have no other choice. And what I long for us to all see is that we do have other choices. So maybe you choose to overeat or overdrink and then blame other people for making the food and the alcohol available. So for many people, when their eating is fueled by emotional childhood, their food choices mirror this. Many choose to eat macaroni and cheese or fast food hamburgers. When we choose not to be responsible for our feelings, we also refuse responsibility for our actions. And emotional adulthood occurs when we take responsibility for how we feel and make choices for how we want to feel. And when we do this, we end up so much more empowered and get to be the people we truly want to be, instead of existing in this default emotional childhood space. Rather than acting like a child out of control, we can allow ourselves to feel our feelings without acting out to avoid, distract, or buffer. And we'll get to buffering, I don't know, next month or the month after. I haven't decided, so much. Or acting out by blaming others. So let's talk about how this emotional childhood shows up in our relationships. We give our husbands, friends, family, colleagues, clients power over the way that we feel. We believe someone else is responsible for making us happy, and that it's usually their fault when we are frustrated or sad. We believe the things they do cause emotions in us because we are in that space. When we're in that space, we constantly try to control those around us. Our emotions are all over the place because we're trying to control the actions of others, and we can never, ever, ever do that. Emotional adults are responsible for their own contentment, peace, calm, joy, happiness, as well as their own unhappiness, their own discontent, their own anxiousness, their own frustration, irritability, disappointment. You get it? They're responsible when their feelings get hurt, right? And they're responsible for their thoughts and their feelings and their actions. This is emotional adults I'm talking about. Sometimes people worry that if they are not, here she comes. She's ready to come back in the office. Sometimes people worry that if they're the only one responsible for how they feel, they might relinquish responsibility for the way they treat other people. But the opposite is actually usually true. When you act from a place of emotional adulthood, you don't act mean or cruel because you're not trying to control others or get them to behave in a certain way. Usually when we yell at people, act mean, throw temper tantrums, give the cold shoulder, it's because we're trying to control another human. This doesn't work, and it causes tension and pain in the relationship. Instead, try working on being an emotional adult, where you allow other people to behave the way they want, while you behave the way you want, and you are responsible for all of your actions and feelings. Even when successfully functioning in emotional adulthood, you might take actions you regret at times, but you will then choose to apologize. Knowing you are responsible for the way you feel means you understand you are responsible for the way you behave too. And I'll talk about this a little bit next week in the training application of how do we take responsibility when we do those things that we're not proud of and we regret, okay, as it relates to hurting other people because we were not acting like emotional adults. This is important because you'll need to decide who you want to be and how you want to act in the world. And because of this, people functioning from emotional adulthood can own up to their mistakes rather than blaming that action they took but based on how someone made them feel, okay? I refer to this by saying, clean up your side of the street. A lot of times my one-on-one clients come to me with some of these issues and they don't always like it when I tell them they have to clean up and own their part in the problem. And when they text me, right, and they'll be like, okay, I went, I apologized, I got hair or something's going on here. And this is what happened. And it is just, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so freeing. And we stay bound in our regret and in our mistakes, and we cannot live that way. So, and we just don't know what we don't know, right? And this will take time for some of us to get used to. And this is because of something I refer to as our manuals, right? Like a manual. Did y'all see that? I can't see anything on the screen. So let's talk about manuals. A manual is basically an instruction guide. Sorry, I have to keep looking. We have for someone in our lives about how we would like for them to behave so we can feel good and happy. Okay. I have a manual for my husband that he doesn't know about. True confession. And that manual is, please do not talk to me until I've had a cup of coffee and I have had like my time in the Word, and that like I know what I'm doing for the day. Okay. He has a manual for me, I would presume, that because he's been up 2 or an hour or so longer than I have, and he is quite awake, that he wants to like hug me, kiss me, talk to me, just be like, hey, how's your day? I'm like, it just started. Like I can't even like really open my eyes well because for some other reason, like my eyes are like crusting over when I sleep. I don't know. But anyway, so I have this manual, and I just now am even really recognizing that, and then I get a little bit irritated by this disruption, if you will. So we generally don't tell the other person what's in our manual. Verbally, at least. I'm sure I non-verbally tell him. And we usually don't even realize we have it or see the pain that it causes us. Okay. I allow that to irritate me, which I know is stupid. A lot of us are like, oh my gosh, I would love for my husband, or to have a husband, or have a husband that would like kiss me and want to talk to me in the morning before my eyes are open. Okay. I get that. But we're all going to own our own lives. We're not going to compare to someone else's life. So anyway, we feel that this other person should just know what to do, how to treat us, how to not treat us. While it may seem justified to have expectations of other people, and that was a silly example, but it can be very damaging when your emotional happiness, contentment, acceptance, choose your emotion is directly tied to someone else behaving a certain way. Okay. I'm feeling like y'all are not going to like me very much with what I'm telling you today. So people do get angry sometimes, but you will not be angry for long as you really start to let this sink in, do some practicing, accepting, and looking at your emotional childhood, your emotional adulthood, and the manuals that you might be living by or expecting of other people. So instead of punishing other people with our anger or our frustration or our irritation, who do we punish? Ourselves. Yes. So I want you to ask yourself, why am I consistently choosing to feel terrible? I would offer that this comes from the belief that you might be happier if someone in your life would change. And this is a huge cause of suffering because you are handing over the power of how you feel to someone else. Other people's behavior has no impact on us emotionally until we think about it, interpret it, and choose to make it mean something. Hard pause. Issues of abuse are a different circumstance, and I hope that you would see through that lens to be different. So even though I don't always believe this, that someone else's behavior doesn't have an impact on me emotionally until I think about it, interpret it, and choose to make it mean something, I truly think that when I don't always believe this, right? I will truly think that Bray's beard hair on the sink after it's been cleaned, when you've had all week to trim your beard, or the smacking of gum is to like intentionally grate on my nerves, right? And no matter what people do or how they act or what they say, we don't have to give others the power to determine how we feel. We actually have the ability to handle those irritations in life. Like I said, silly examples, but we all have them. And this concept is a little mind-blowing. Some common manual instructions could be, yes to the beard hair on the sink. I know, right? Some common manual instructions could be not just for like people you're close with in life. It could be somebody driving down the road. But common manual instructions for others could be, she should call me back when I call her. She should remember my birthday. She should invite me when she has a party. She should write me a thank you note. She should be kind and understand when I'm frustrated. She should support me. She should listen to me as long as I listen to her. She could come to the hospital when my father is dying. She should ask me to be a bridesmaid or a godmother. He should tell me he loves me. He should buy me something special on my birthday. He should know what I like. He should be emotionally available. He should want to go to the movies or see movies I like. He should make more money. He should spend less time at work. He should spend less time hunting. He should spend more time with the kids. He shouldn't watch so much football. He should take out the garbage without having to be asked, right? We have lots of manuals we didn't even know. And these are just, these examples are simple and brief, but the truth is that most manuals are pages and pages thick. They're complicated, intricate, detailed. Somebody needs to get my dog in from barking. Rather than sharing these expectations with the person they're about, people with manuals generally feel like the other person should just inherently know. Then they are then eager to interpret this as a sign that they are really loved by someone or accepted or valued or treasured. So what's the problem with manuals? Well, adults have the ability and freedom to behave how they choose. This includes you. Can you get Dixie inside? She's barking. Can you get Dixie inside? She's barking. Adults have the ability and freedom to behave however they choose. And this includes you, and this includes me. And the people that we want to change includes them too. And the truth is, you cannot control another person, and there's nothing they could possibly do that would make you as happy as you think you could be by them or because of them. All of the power to feel happy lies within you and your thoughts. And all the people around you may do things that give you positive thoughts and feelings at times, they won't be able to do such things all of the time or may not want to. So if your emotional life is tied to anyone's behavior, you're giving away all of your power and you have set yourself up for a disaster. So the question is, how do we let go of these manuals? So the best first steps are to realize that these manuals are based on other people and recognize that the benefits of taking responsibility for our own rules is by creating personal operating manuals for ourselves. The truth is that most of us cannot even control or manage ourselves, yet we want to control and manage other people, which is somewhat ridiculous. Controlling our own behavior is challenging enough, but trying to control other people is inevitably frustrating for both parties and usually ineffective. If I were to have you explore what it is that you want people to do differently and why, the answer will always be that you think if the other person changes their behavior, you will feel better. However, we know that another person's behavior doesn't control our feelings ever. It's only our thinking that thinking that affects how we feel. And when someone doesn't follow your manual, you may choose thoughts such as, this person likes me and cares about me. This is what might cause you to feel good. When someone doesn't follow your manual and you interpret negatively, you feel bad. When we don't take responsibility for how we feel, we give that power away to someone else based on their behavior. So I want you to remind yourself that you want someone to behave differently so you can feel better. But in the end, that's not even possible because other people's actions cannot dictate your feelings. These new thoughts can help you take a deep breath and stop trying to control other people. Take responsibility for how you feel when their behaviors occur. Okay? You get to decide, and regardless of their behavior, you get to decide what you're going to do with your time, how you're going to respond, and what you want to make and what changes you want to make in your life. You'll want to make sure you're thinking about those changes and what you want based on what you have control over. So let's get to this part, because I know you're thinking, well, don't I have power over my kids a little bit at this point as a parent? Yes. As a parent, you likely have expectations for your children. If you're a boss, you have expectations for your employees. And this is different from the type of manual we are talking about here. So if you're setting clear expectations for your children or employees and have clear consequences when they don't meet those expectations, you're not going to have any reason to be emotionally hurt if and when they fail to meet them. The best bosses and parents are consistent and clear about expectations and consequences. You will know if you have manuals for your children or employees in addition to the expectations you've outlined by whether you are emotionally affected by their behavior. If you're managing and parenting from a clean space, if you will, a space where you are acting like an emotional adult instead of an emotional child, the emotion is removed and your job becomes simpler because it's not about you any longer. It's about the employee or the child. For example, you may tell your child that she's expected to make her bed every day and that if she doesn't, there will be a consequence. This is appropriate and can help teach your child a habit you want her to develop. You wouldn't say, if you don't make your bed, it's going to hurt mommy's feelings and I'll be very sad. When people do function in this way, we call it emotional blackmail, and it's not a healthy way to manage children or people in general. So if you're a manager at work, you can set very clear expectations and provide feedback. If those employees don't honor your request and they don't follow through on what you've asked them to do, you get to decide whether you let them keep working for you or if you put them on some probation or whatever you have set up. Or you can just let it go. That's on you. You don't have to be upset about it. That's totally yours to be responsible for. You don't have to get angry when people don't comply with what you wanted or expected. People don't like being controlled or forced. And an ultimatum is actually a boundary violation against the other person. So you might be saying, are you telling me I shouldn't tell my husband that he should take out the garbage or get home on time or spend time with the children? Of course, you can make any request in your life that you desire, but when you allow your emotional happiness or contentment or peace to depend on whether these expectations and requests, are met, then you're setting yourself up for trouble. When we do this, we start banging our heads against the wall, trying to manipulate people to behave in the way that we want so we can feel better. This creates a spiral of negativity, and it's what we call a manual. So perhaps you want your friends to call you once a week and on your birthday. Perhaps that's your friendship manual. In most cases, you probably don't share this manual with your friends. It's just an expectation you have and you think is understood. When your friends don't honor this, you might feel frustrated and let them know they hurt your feelings by not calling you. This sets you up for more frustration and drama. The alternative is that you have friends, but you allow them to be who they are. If they want to call you, they call you. If they don't call you back, you don't construe it to mean anything negative. You can just love people and enjoy who they are and not have manuals for them, which can be a very freeing way to live. Do you want the manuals people have for you? No. Again, it's perfectly reasonable to make requests to friends that they call you back, but always remember that whether they decide to honor this request has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. You can choose just to love and enjoy them as they are. And when you embrace this concept, it sets you up for very enjoyable, long-lasting, conflict-free relationships. If a friend doesn't show up when you expect them to, let them know you're bummed that they weren't there, and next time you'd really like them to give you more notice. But don't continue to silently blame them for this mistake. It might mean that you won't expect them to show up on time in the future, but you can work around that and you don't have to hold them to the fire. Being on time doesn't mean being on time might be very important to you, but that doesn't always mean that it's important to someone else, right? It also doesn't mean they don't respect you or your time. It might just mean they have a hard time managing their schedule. There doesn't have to be hurt feelings or subsequent drama. Most people have a manual for their significant others too. We have a lot of ideas of how we like for them to behave, who we'd like them to be. And this comes from our idea, like I said, that if they were more like we wanted them to be, we would somehow be happier as a result. And it's important to remember that your happiness comes from you, and it doesn't matter what your spouse is, who your spouse is, or what they do when it comes to this emotional happiness. Spouses who are compatible with us are definitely going to make it more easier for us to have positive thoughts around them, but it doesn't mean they have to change in order for that to be true, right? Because then they may master one manual, but then they have another one they don't even know about, right? So it's just a never-ending cycle. So Amberly, how do we start with this? Well, we release all the rules and expectations we have for others. We listen to others. We hear what's going on for them. And that's how our relationships can change for the better. We can start understanding them from a different perspective that isn't clouded by our own thinking and our own expectations. And additionally, we are going to rewrite our own manual, who and how we are going to show up for ourselves. We don't have to go around changing other people to feel better. You can feel better on your own accord. You can decide, I'm not going to make my life about the way I believe I'm entitled to be treated. That's unspoken. I obviously want you to have self-respect, self-worth, value. But when it comes to these little bitty things, no. The only thing I'm entitled to is taking care of my own emotional life, my own brain, so I can make sure I'm thinking thoughts that don't make me feel miserable, and believing in my self-worth and my value in who Christ has created me to be. Also consider, if you really want someone else to do something they don't want. Also consider, do you really want someone else to do something they don't want to do? Sometimes it's necessary. That's part of being people. But think about it in terms of this illustration, okay? There was a client who was frustrated because she did not want to pick up the dog poop in her backyard. Fortunately, we have kids for this, but and she didn't want to clean it up. And neither did her husband. So she felt it was unfair for her to have to do it, but her husband didn't care if it was there. So she took this to mean he didn't care about her, didn't want to contribute, and wasn't an equal partner. And she made it mean, holy moly, hold on. I just almost had a mini moment. of panic because I didn't know if I was recording this or not, but I am. Okay. Anyway, so she made it mean something so much more that now, oh, wait, hang on. So she took this to mean that he didn't care about her and that he didn't want to contribute and wasn't an equal partner. So she made this all mean something so much more than just the dog poo in the backyard. So now, instead of having dog poop in the yard, she is so frustrated and aggravated with her husband, which only compounds the problem. So she asks him over and over and over to do it, and he still won't. And then in the instances that he does, she's still frustrated, right? One manual leads to another. And she's still frustrated because he didn't do it automatically, right? So she can continue making this request of her husband, but if he doesn't do it, she's going to have to let go of this manual and not make it interpret things that aren't founded in reality. Because all this does is affects her relationship with him. And so now they've got dog poop all over the yard and all over their marriage too, right? So we all benefit from really thinking about the things we want to have done and how we want other people to behave. It is truly possible to let go of all of your rules, all of your regulations, and all of your attempts to control other people in your life. Consider letting these things go and making requests if you want to, but with no strings attached. Genuinely notice what people do when you don't try to control them. If you focus on trying to control only yourself and your responses to how other people behave, what do you imagine your life would look like? In our personal relationships, it's much easier to let go of our manuals because then we start letting people just be who they are. And that gives you more time and freedom to be who you are and work toward being who you are desiring to show up as in your life, right? You get to start creating new habits. You get to start improving your health. You get to start a new hobby when you are freed up from thinking so much about other people. And you can just be who you are as you desire to be. So I want you to think about, I'm so sorry, Dixie. I want you to think about that person you want to be. I want you to envision, how does she look? How does she act? What time does she wake up? How does she walk? How does she dress? How does she not look at her list when she needs it, right? Oh, well, I can't find it. No, how does she, let me find them. Is she vacationing? Is she working out? Is she laughing? What does her ideal day look like? What time does she wake up? What are her habits? Does she take care of herself? What do her relationships look like? How does she interact with friends and family and her husband, her colleagues, her students? Is she in a Bible study? Does she attend painting classes? Is she taking up tennis? What does she do to engage with others? What is her home environment like? Is it neat and tidy? Or does she need to let some of that go? Does she make her bed? Or are they non-bed making families and fine with it? So these are the things we envision as the people we want to be. And that's what we think about when we start dipping into our manuals and our emotional childhood. We think about that person we want to show up as and how we're going to have to step into being an emotional adult and letting go of our manuals for others so that you can get to her. You are, in fact, the owner and the operator and the sole, S-O-U-L, proprietor of you, LLC. And that is what we are going to do in 2021. So that's all I have for today. Please, as you watch the replay, comment, feedback, ask questions, and I will have a training for you next week on just exactly how do we clean up our side of the street, mind our own business, stay in our own hula hoop, and some other exciting things. And if you write out who this person is that you're going to show up as 2021 and what you're going to keep in your framework of thinking as these things come into your life, these emotional childhood moments, these manuals, you can stop, think about who it is and how you want to show up and shift. Okay? Hope you guys have a great day. Bye.